What's it all about? Why are we here? Is there a God? What happens when we die? In this series, I'm talking to public figures about these questions. Like me, none of them claims to be a religious expert, but all of them have, at times, had cause to think about the meaning of life. Hello again and welcome, and thank you for joining us on this very auspicious occasion. We are recording this interview on the 19th of May, which just happens to be the 77th birthday of our guest, John Sheahan. And we join in wishing you a very happy birthday and many happy returns.
Thanks, Gay. Nice to be here.
Anyway, not only that, but we are recording this interview in the casino in Marino, which was John's choice of venue. Give me a little more about that, John, please.
Yeah, this building, a neoclassical building dating back to the 1750s, I think. It was part of the landscape of Marino when I grew up. A rather aloof kind of a building, but we all had a notion that someday we would visit this place and find out what's going on in there.
And it's full of trickery.
Yeah, full of optical illusions, you know. When you view it from the outside, it looks like it might be an empty chamber inside. But there's, I think, 16 rooms.
And of course, it's on your home turf. Let's talk about your parents, Pat and Mary. I know they were both from Limerick, and they had 5 of you, 3 girls and two boys.
Yeah.
And your father was a guard in Store Street.
That's right.
Overall, a lovely childhood in your memory.
Absolutely, yeah. Very happy childhood, very contented house, very peaceful, loving relationship between my mother and father, and between all of us. I don't think there was ever a row or any harsh words uttered between anybody.
Was it very religious?
Religious in the traditional way, I suppose. It was regular mass every Sunday and evening devotions and confession once a week. And we had the family rosary every evening. And if I had pals in and we were about to sneak out the door, my father would call us back, "Hold on now, a minute, lads. You kneel down and say the rosary. It won't take you more than 10 or 15 minutes. So the pals would be roped in, and they get a mystery each as well, you know. And we all knelt around the fireplace. We each took a chair, knelt to the chair with our heads against the back of the chair, dangling the rosary beads, you know. But it wasn't such a pious occasion in some respects, because my mother was a bit of a character, and she'd be dangling the rosary beads, and there was a little pet cat that we had, and he'd be going for the beads, of course, and we'd be all trying to keep back the giggles, because my father was a bit more stern and a bit more serious, you know.
Was there a lot of music in the house?
Not in the early days, although both parents had a great appreciation of traditional music. My mother, I remember my mother going around the house doing her household chores. She'd be singing all the time, singing little songs to herself. And my father had a great knowledge of traditional Irish music and could lilt a lot of tunes, you know.
Now, you shared a class, I know, with Paddy Maloney of the
That's
Chieftains.
right, yeah.
There is another parallel with Paddy, because he was on this programme and he told us on that occasion that his parents had lost a child in infancy before he, Paddy, was born.
Right.
And that death cast a shadow over his childhood. Now, tell me about the little brother that you never got to know.
Okay, yeah. Well, I've an older brother, Dennis. He's a year and 9 months older than me. And he was a half-twin, as they used to say. The other little boy, he died when he was about 3 or 4 weeks old. And he was christened John.
Ah.
And when I came along, his name was, as it were, gifted to me. And apparently that was a tradition in the old days. You know, if a boy died, his name would be saved for the next that came along. And it's amazing that very strong maternal instinct. My mother, up to the age of well into her 80s, whenever she talked about this little boy who died, you could see a little trickle of a tear coming into the eye. Even after all these years, she felt that bond and that loss, you know, and I suppose thought of the potential that had died with him. And sometimes in a daydreaming kind of a way, you know, myself, I think that maybe because I was gifted with his name, maybe in a sense that I might be acting out the life that he might have lived, you know. Maybe he might have been a fiddle player, a musician, or whatever, you know.
So tell me about the Christian Brothers in Marino, John.
Well, they were like the Christian Brothers everywhere, except with a couple of exceptions, I suppose. By and large, I think it was a case of learning through fear. The threat of the letter was always there, you know. And but we had one wonderful brother, Brother McCaffrey, and we had him for singing lessons. That was part of the curriculum then. You learned how to sing and how to read music and the tonic solfa. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, so, mi, do. He brought a tin whistle into the class one day and played a couple of tunes for us. And we were all mesmerised. And then he said, would anybody like to learn to play? Of course, sir, everybody in the class had their hand up. So after a week or two at the tin whistle, he taught us the Dawning of the Day, Raglan Road melody now, and some of these simple tunes, you know. And after a couple of weeks, I obviously had a bit of a gift for music, and it was beginning to show at this stage without being boastful, because I remember coming back and I played a tune for him, and he said, who showed you how to put in that grace note there? And I said, nobody, is it okay? He said, it's lovely, but did you just do it yourself? And I said, yeah, and that's the way it went, you know.
You obviously had a talent, and the minute you mention talent, religion and belief and God comes into it, because the belief that is it a God-given talent, and therefore I'm asking you, do you think that you have a God-given talent, or what is it?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is a God-given gift, okay, and I think everybody is born with some gift, and I think the prime purpose of education really is for the educator to discover what gifts each child has, and then to foster and nurture that gift and progress it in whatever way they can. In my case, yeah, definitely a God-given talent. Where else could it come from? That's the way I look at it.
Okay, now, the Christian Brothers in Sing Street and in Marino and all over the place, the stated objective was to give you an education to get you through the Intercert and the Leaving Cert, and please got a grand job in the civil service or the bank or the
Right, yeah.
But they made no bones about saying that the real reason you were there was for the class from 12 to 12:30 every day without exception, which was Catholic theology and catechism and religious knowledge and so on. How much of that has stuck to the 77-year-old John Sheahan?
I think it sticks with everybody. It's kind of ingrained into you as a young person, and who made the world? God made the world, and all these ritual kind of questions and answers in the catechism. I often think back on some of the big words that were used in the catechism, you know. Why do we call that day good on which Christ died so painful and ignominious a death? Now, ignominious for a 7-year-old, what in the name of Jesus does that mean, you know? but there too much emphasis on sin, I think, and hell and eternal flames. And
damnation.
Frightened to be Jesus out to you, you know? And then you start thinking for yourself, and you think, eternal flames, like, flames can't last for eternity. Flames are something confined to a time zone and a finite zone, and yeah, there's no such thing as eternal flames.
Part of the joy of doing this series of programs, The Meaning of Life, is that you find out that so many people were already doing something else before they ended up doing what they do. I mean, who could have believed that Gabriel Byrne, the other Gabriel Byrne, was a spoiled priest? Or Paddy Maloney was in the building trade, the building contracting trade. Or that Brendan O'Carroll was a waiter, and a very, very good waiter. I know that because he told me that.
Right, yeah.
And you went to work for the ESB. You're a qualified electrician. You're a draftsman. And if you had stayed with the ESB, John, you would now be sitting on a fat pension from the ESB at this stage in your life. Win na wikia, you would be.
On the pig's back.
if you'd only stayed. So the amazing thing is that you had the courage at some stage to leave the security of that and get on with doing something else. Yeah,
again, it's the overriding love of music, I think. When you balance that against a good pensionable job, the music wins out, you know. And I ended up my career in the ESB as a draftsman for 5 years. And during that period, I started playing with the Dubliners. And in those days, you could take your annual leave in a couple of days here and there, or until you got into the sick leave state. And I was at that stage, and I got my brother Dennis to ring up one day and say, John is sick today, he won't be in. And my boss called me in the next day. We were doing a gig up in Belfast that night, you see, in the Ulster Hall. Called me in the next day and produced a copy of the Irish Times. Dubliners had a marvellous reception at the Ulster Hall last night. And he said, you obviously got over your sickness okay, you know. So that was a signal to me to think about retiring and go for the music full time, you know.
So you slight propulsion into making up your mind.
I remember having a chat with my father about it, and just to get his imprimatur on it, as it were. And he says, well, he knew the lads were rough and ready and there was no great future in it, the way things looked. And he said, well, sure, give it a go if that's what you want to do. Have a go at it, and if it doesn't work out, there'll always be a roof over your head here. They were the exact words he used. Yeah.
So you left the ESB and you joined the Dubliners, and you got roughly in or about 1964, and it finished in or about 2012.
Yeah.
You had 48, 50 years.
Yeah.
When most groups last 2 years.
2 or 3 years.
2 or 3 years. Even the Beatles only got 10 years out of it. How did that stay together? How did that...
Yeah.
One of the most volatile groups in the public imagination.
Absolutely, yeah. But it was a volatile kind of a situation, kind of a baptism of fire in a way, because the actual day I gave in my notice to the ESB, we had a meeting that evening, and it wasn't in O'Donoghue's because it was meant to be a business meeting. We had it across the road in Downey and Nesbitt's. You see, and I think Barney accidentally kicked Ronnie in the shin under the table. And Ronnie thought it was on purpose, and there was tables upended and points all over the place, and it was F you, and that's the end of the whole bloody lot now. And I'm driving home with Bob Lynch, who had joined the group with me. And Bob was saying, what's going to happen now? And I said, geez, I don't know, I've given up my good pensionable job today. And Ronnie, I get a ring from Ronnie 2 days later, he said, are you okay for Friday? We're down in Mullingar. And I said, I thought the group broke up the other day, Ronnie. I don't think any knows that happens every couple of weeks. So that was the only reassurance I got, and after that it just kept going and kept going. You know?
50 years later.
I think part of the reason, the longevity, I think part of the reason might be that we never had any long-term plans. When you're free and easy like we were, you know, we just worked from week to week, month to month, and it was just a bit of an adventure that went on and on and on, you know.
Away from music for a moment, I want to hear about Mary Morgan. From Ballybay, County Monaghan.
That's right.
And I want to know where you met and how you met, and was it love at first sight, and what happened then?
Yeah, Mary's from County Monaghan, a wonderful girl, the backbone of my life. Mary was friendly with Bob Lynch and his wife. I was doing gigs with Bob Lynch before we became inducted into the Dubliners, as it were. And Bob would say to his wife, maybe if we were out at a gig, better give Mary a ring and see if the kids are okay. She was babysitting for his kids. So without ever having met Mary, I conjured up a picture of an old lady minding the kids, you see. So anyway, I was up in Bob's house one day and I met this Mary and I said, oh, this is a totally different Mary from the one I had imagined. And there was just a natural spark between us, I think, a natural kind of empathy straight away. And that's how it started, you know, and we went out for about 1.5 years together but then we got married and settled down.
And she was fully aware of the discipline of being in the Dubliners.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, because she'd been at a number of the gigs and she could see that it was a setup that mightn't last too long, you know, that you couldn't be betting on it to last for a pensionable period or anything like that.
And a lot of night work and a lot of travelling.
That's right, yeah. But Mary was great with the kids, and she never threatened them with wait till your father comes home. She always dealt with any little problems or misbehaviours as they happened. She dealt with them herself, and they had great respect for Mary and good respect for myself, 4 fine kids.
Coming back to the Dubliners again, you and Mary saved up and you managed to buy a semi in Raheny.
Raheny, yeah.
And so you the two of you looked as if you were a respectable accountant or the local bank manager or something, instead of being a member of one of the most volatile and noisy and rambunctious groups in the business. And were you that? Were you the minder for the group?
I suppose I was in a way. I mean, the rest of them up to that point had led quite a bohemian kind of lifestyle, no regular jobs or anything like that. Whereas I came from a conservative kind of a background, if you like. And straight away I could foresee a certain role that I could play and putting more of a structure on this outfit. You know, that there was wonderful, raw, undisciplined kind of talent there, and I could see it could be harvested in a certain way and promoted in a certain way. And I became what I sometimes describe as the mortar between the bricks.
Like, who took care of the money end of things and the accountancy and the returns?
Yeah, that became part of my function. Because in the beginning, like, whatever came in on the door, it was divided up and that was it. And I began to say, well, what about the petrol money for the cars that were used to get to the gig? And should we not be thinking of investing in some sound equipment for ourselves for later on instead of hiring it out all the time? And their attitude, well, if you want to look after that, okay, go ahead and do whatever you have to do. And that worked fairly well for a while until funds were running a little bit low, and I was given an ultimatum down in Galway after the gig one night. I said, listen, John, no deductions tonight. We've families to feed and children to feed. And I thought, geez, maybe I'm a bit harsh on this lot with these deductions, you know. So I gave in anyway, and I said, okay, there's the divvy out for the night. And I went off for a little while and came back. And here were the four of them up on high stools with Havana cigars and large brandies, which are the necessities of life. That was the thing. They said, we need the necessities of life. Yeah. And I said, you and your necessities of life, well, feck yous anyway.
It just amazes me that you stayed sane in the middle of all of that and still playing the music and still doing your job and still looking after them like a father figure.
Yeah, there was an element of that, I suppose.
You didn't drink at this stage? Or?
No, I had the Pioneer pin, actually.
As a matter of interest, have you ever taken alcohol?
Oh, yes, but in moderation.
At what age did you start?
I'm not sure. I would have been in my early 30s, I think, 31 or 32 maybe. But that'd be after a concert in a restaurant, and I would never drink. I never have drunk before a gig.
Let me ask you about Siobhan, Fiachra, Owen and Ceola, your own children.
Yeah.
Your father, you said, was a little bit strict on you, rather more strict than your mother. How strict were you on your own children, John, growing up?
I suppose I could give you a glib answer and say not strict enough, but that wouldn't be true because they're all very good kids. I didn't have to be in any particular way disciplined to keep them in manners and teach them good manners and how to behave and how to respect each other and all those kind of, I suppose you could call them Christian values, really. We gave them a concept of God, I suppose, in the same way as we picked it up ourselves. God is a holy man up in heaven, up in the sky somewhere, looking at He's like the father figure of us all, of all humankind, and you pray to Him to be good and to be holy, and those kind of general things.
Now, your children have produced 5 grandchildren, including little Sive, who died.
That's right, yeah.
And whenever you think of something like that, I think of Stephen Fry, who caused a big controversy on this program.
Yes.
When I asked him what would he say to God, and he went for questioning this omniscient, omnipotent God. Little babies with bone cancer, he said, what is all that about? What is all that about? He wanted to ask God in his anger. And I just wonder, when something like that happens to you and your little grandchild dies in infancy, did you rail against God, or did you find consolation in the faith that you had?
I suppose the faith does give us consolation. I didn't get angry. I don't think any of the family got angry. There was a sadness, okay, and a definite sense of mourning, but at the same time, consolation in the notion that this little infant has gone to heaven to its reward, which is another thing that fascinates me, but that must be like for an infant to die and be suddenly cast into the presence of God without having any foreknowledge of a God or the language to express something about a God beforehand. It must be an amazing feeling for that child. And I suppose that might be part of the consolation, that we have an angel or a saint in heaven looking after us. And likewise, my brother John, Dennis's half-twin, it occurred to me that, okay, there's two angels in the family. One is a grand uncle angel of the other. And they're consoling thoughts, but at the same time, there's a deep sense of mourning there, and a loss of a potential life and what it might have been and what it might have achieved, you know.
So you mentioned God. Tell me about God. How do you envisage God?
I think in probably two different images. One would be the image of God out of the Bibles and the drawings of this tall, 6-foot-odd man with the long hair. A bit of a beatnik look, I suppose, about him. But that'd be one picture. The other picture would be looking at the night sky and being enthralled with the wonder of creation, looking at stars as if they were still here and they've gone out of existence thousands of years ago, and thinking about the vastness of creation and realizing that this couldn't have happened by chance. There must be a super intelligence up there who created all of this. That would be another image of God.
And the disciples and the apostles and all of those guys, what were they as far as you're concerned?
They're a bunch of fishermen and beatniks, a bit like the Dubliners ended up at one stage, I'd say. No particular jobs and dossing around, but were attracted by his powerful presence and followed him and became his disciples. But Jesus Christ, I would think of as God incarnate, if you like. He came down and took on a human appearance and dwelt amongst us and I suppose taught us how to lead better lives. Love your neighbour as yourself. I think if we all obeyed that principle, we'd have a very happy world. There's some of my random thoughts about God now.
And do you pray?
I do. I wouldn't be one for saying loads of Hail Marys and Our Fathers, or even saying the Rosary nowadays, but I think to say the Lord's Prayer very slowly and think of the meaning of all the words as you're saying it, I think that's much more powerful and meaningful than rattling off 50 Hail Marys in the Rosary, you know, like a chant or a mantra. But when you say, do you pray, I think composing a piece of music could be a prayer. I think music is very much a spiritual language, a language of the mind, a language of thoughts. And the transfer of that thought into something material, like a piece of music, that transition is something that fascinates me. I'm not sure if I'm answering the question out that you asked.
Indeed you are. So you don't, are you saying to me that you don't pray for things? Or do you?
No, I don't. I'm not sure if it's right to pray to achieve something or to get some material benefits. If they're the right thing for you to get, I think God will see that you get them anyway. But I think it's more appropriate to pray in thanksgiving for all the gifts that we do have.
And would you go to Mass regularly now?
No, to be honest with you now, I'd be a lukewarm Catholic in that respect. And I think that happened, I suppose, over a period of touring and waking up on a Sunday morning and having to go off somewhere else, or not going to the trouble of finding out if there is a church around the place. But I think of God nearly every day and say my prayers in my own fashion. I think it's a good communal thing for people to get together and pray and meet each other.
What happens when we die, John, as far as you're concerned? Do you expect to see Ronnie, Luke, Barney again?
No.
No?
No. We won't be sitting around having cups of tea and chatting about the old world and that kind of thing. But I think we'll meet each other in a spiritual sense, and I think there'll be a very strong bonding between us by virtue of the fact that we're both experiencing the same divine God, this wonderful spiritual presence.
The bad fellas. Do you think that there is a comeuppance for bad people? Is there the general judgment day?
Mm-hmm. Well, hell is a common picture, I suppose, of a place of punishment for people who don't lead good lives. But I think the eternal flames of hell, I think they were invented by the early Christian churches to frighten us into holiness. But kind of an analogy I thought of recently about heaven is that it's like a big theatrical show, and the people up at the front who've led very good lives, they have a very clear vision of the whole show. And as you progress back through the theatre, the vision gradually diminishes in proportion to the lives that these other people led. And eventually you get to the baddies at the back. And I'd imagine they have a very blurred image of God. They'd be unsure of what's going on, you know. And because they haven't worked during their lives to develop a capacity for happiness. And for them to have a glimpse of God, I think, would be like playing Beethoven for a snail, or taking a pig on a holiday. Be that meaningless, you know. So I think that's their hell. I think we all have fragments of the goodness of God in us, and that's our spirit, I suppose. And there's a hunger within the spirit to be reunited with God. And I think the real hell is the separation of that unification, reunification being fulfilled. That'd be my general kind of notion of.
Okay, second last question. For you, John, now on your 77th birthday, what is the meaning of life for you?
Well, I think it's a kind of a trial period. I think the idea is to lead as good a life as we can, be kind to other people, do goodness wherever you can in the way of your fellow man. So if we're all kind to each other, do good, don't shout, don't be fighting. I think that's what a good life is about.
That would be a wonderful world.
Yeah, absolutely. Idyllic, I suppose, yeah.
Final question. Suppose it's all true, John, all that you were taught by the Christian brothers, and you end up at the pearly gates and you meet God. What will John Sheahan say to God?
I'd probably say something like, well, God, I would have been happy to be a speck of dust in your creation. But you went further than that, and you gave me a soul, and I'm eternally grateful for that.
That should do it. Is there any chance of a little tune before you leave us on your birthday?
Yeah, sure.
Well, do you have the little... Oh, you do?
Oh, sure.
I knew you would have.
Always ready. Well, this very building here was the inspiration for this tune, the Marino Casino.
Happy birthday, John Sheahan.
Thanks very much,
Many happy
Gay.
returns to you. That was lovely.
God bless you. Thank you.